Hello, I'm Isabella, and I'm about to celebrate my 29th birthday. This year marks 4 years since I married my husband, Larry, who's 2 years older than me. Our son, Roger, just turned 3. I used to work full-time, but after Roger arrived, I switched to a part-time role at the same company so I could better balance work and family life. From the beginning of our relationship, Larry was always straightforward and confident, but since we got married, I've noticed a more dominant side to him. Larry has a younger sister, Rachel, who's 10 years his junior, 22 years old. Their age gap seems to have fostered an overly indulgent attitude toward her, and while it didn't bother me much before we married, things have started to change since then. Rachel's visits, once charming, have become frequent and unannounced. She often arrives empty-handed, expecting hospitality without any regard for us, and, when she does visit, Larry expects me to serve her without question. She speaks to me as if I'm invisible, addressing Larry with a casual, "Hey, brother, I'm here again." Despite not planning for extra guests, I find myself serving dinner to Rachel and Larry. Larry, instead of showing any understanding, criticizes me in front of her, insisting that I should have been more thoughtful. Though Rachel apologizes in words, it's clear she relishes the preferential treatment from Larry. After dinner, they leave the table a mess and move to the living room, leaving Roger and me largely ignored, treated more like staff than family. One evening, just as Roger and I were about to take a bath, Larry interrupted loudly, demanding I go out and buy a gateau for Rachel, because she wanted it right now, despite it being late. Reluctantly, I agreed, taking Roger along with me to the shop. While we were out, I overheard Larry and Rachel criticizing me, questioning Larry's decision to marry me. Roger, though too young to understand fully, sensed the tension. To lighten the mood, I asked him about the gateau, and his excited choice, a fruit-covered one, helped distract us from the discomfort. We managed to find both the gateau Rachel wanted and the one Roger picked just before the shop closed. When we returned and served them, Rachel pointed at Roger's special gateau and claimed it for herself. Before I could respond, Larry took it from Roger and handed it to Rachel. Dismissing Roger's protests, Larry justified his action by saying he'd paid for the gateau, so he had the right to decide who gets which one. At that moment, I couldn't hold back any longer. I voiced my frustration loud and clear. Larry responded by threatening divorce. Roger, who had been crying, tried to ease the tension by saying, "Mom, I love gateau with strawberries too. It's delicious," as he ate a piece of the gateau meant for Rachel. Seeing Roger suffer was too much for me. I quickly moved him to another room where he could enjoy his gateau in peace. In the other room, I could hear Larry apologizing to Rachel, regretting his behavior, but I stayed silent, choosing to focus on Roger's well-being. Watching him happily eat his gateau was a small comfort. Afterward, we decided to take a late bath and sleep in Roger's bed. The next morning, as I prepared breakfast, I was shocked to hear Roger crying. His cherished piggy bank, a gift from my father, had been broken, and all the money he had saved was gone. Roger, who always said goodnight to his piggy bank, was devastated. When I confronted Larry, he casually mentioned that Rachel had taken the money because she needed some cash. Holding my crying, trembling son, I felt his pain deeply. I cried with him. It was heartbreaking to see Larry put his sister's needs above our son's. Driven by anger and sadness, I confronted Larry more directly than ever before. Breaking my usual practice of avoiding arguments in front of Roger, I demanded an explanation. Without a word, Larry went to the bedroom and returned with something that took my breath away: divorce papers. I was completely shocked when I found the hidden divorce papers Larry had prepared in secret, his anger clear in every gesture. Without a word, he thrust the papers at me and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Standing there, holding Roger in my arms, the weight of our family's struggles finally hit me. Roger, who had always remained quiet about the tension between Larry and Rachel, reached his breaking point. Since the night before, he'd been crying, and the sight of his distress was too much for me to bear. I suggested we skip daycare for the day, and his loud, enthusiastic yes, accompanied by a faint smile, told me everything I needed to know. We both needed a break, so we dedicated the day to playing and bonding. Roger, beaming with joy, grabbed a picture book from the shelf, climbed into my lap, and announced, "Mama is the teacher at the nursery, right?" His innocent remark and angelic expression melted my heart, and in that moment, I decided to make the day even more special by taking the day off work. Though it might cause some inconvenience, my colleagues understood and gave me the time off. We spent the morning at the park, playing hide-and-seek and enjoying the sandbox and slide. By the time we returned home for lunch, Roger was visibly tired. Normally, he'd nap alone, but today he fell asleep in my lap, just like when he was a baby. For a moment, I thought about catching up on household chores, but I quickly decided against it. Today was about cherishing these peaceful moments with Roger. I let myself be healed by the sight of his serene, sleeping face and the sound of his gentle breathing. Just as I was soaking in the tranquility, the sound of the front door opening interrupted the calm. It was an unusual time for Larry to come home, and my heart raced with alarm. I quickly scooped Roger into my arms and hid us both in the bedroom closet. Through the thin walls, I heard a voice, Rachel's. My pulse quickened as I listened to her rummage through the house, muttering in frustration about not finding what she was looking for. Then, I heard her make a phone call, mentioning Larry and discussing their failed search. After locking the door behind her, Rachel left. I slowly came out of the closet, carefully put Roger to bed, and sat down, my mind spinning. The idea that Larry and Rachel might be conspiring left me feeling betrayed and afraid. In a whirlwind of emotions, I packed some essentials for Roger and me, and we left for the train station. Thankfully, my parents lived just 3 stops away. I didn't inform them of our arrival, but when they saw the worry in my eyes, they knew something was wrong. Without asking questions, they welcomed us in, providing the safety and understanding I desperately needed. Once settled in the comfort of their home, I shared everything with them, the shocking events, my fear of returning home, and the unsettling behavior of Larry and Rachel. My mother, ever the perceptive one, speculated that Rachel had been searching for my personal belongings, perhaps cash or cards. The thought of it sent another wave of dread through me, but at least here, with my parents, I felt a sense of temporary safety amidst the storm. As I reflected on my early career, I remembered the successes I had before marriage. I had once been the CEO of a thriving handmade goods company, a role I eventually passed on to trusted friends so I could focus on raising my child. Despite stepping back from the company, I continued working part-time from home. What Larry didn't know was that I had retained my position as CEO and maintained a level of financial independence that he was completely unaware of. The discovery of the hidden divorce papers Larry had secretly stashed away made me suspect that he believed I had substantial savings. While I had mentioned that the company still provided me with some financial support, I had purposely withheld the details of my CEO role and the full extent of my savings. This secrecy stemmed from my early realization that Larry struggled with managing money and tended to spend everything he earned. In the beginning, Larry contributed very little to our monthly food expenses and even suggested I quit working to become a full-time housewife. Given the financial strain of raising Roger on a tight food budget, I never agreed to stop working. Eventually, Larry grudgingly accepted that I would continue working part-time. Since Roger's birth, I had been using my savings to cover his nursery fees and clothing because Larry's contributions to the food budget were insufficient. I never asked him for more money, reinforcing his mistaken belief that I had ample savings. Considering Rachel's apparent need for money and Larry's misconceptions about my financial situation, it seemed likely that they were searching for my cash cards to safeguard against any potential financial intrusion. I had a separate savings account for Roger, into which a portion of my salary was directly deposited each month. Despite their efforts, they wouldn't find any cash cards, as I always kept my valuables with me. However, the ongoing issue of Rachel's unauthorized entries into our home, potentially with Larry's help, remained deeply troubling. Taking my father's advice to heart, I decided to secure my valuables, including my cash cards, in my parents' safe. As I pondered their motivations, Roger approached my father, tears in his eyes, distraught over his broken piggy bank. The incident highlighted not only their financial invasion, but also the emotional toll it was taking on my son. My father was incensed by the news of Roger's broken piggy bank and his lost savings, vowing to confront Larry. My mother, however, suggested a more cautious approach, finding out their motives first, as rash accusations could make us look guilty in the eyes of the law, potentially tipping the scales in Larry's favor during a divorce. To better understand their intentions, I decided to secretly record their conversations. I consulted a lawyer who was a friend of my father's before heading back to our home that evening. As I began preparing dinner, I strategically placed my phone face down on the kitchen counter to discreetly record. Larry came home earlier than expected and immediately started questioning me about my cash cards. His questions were probing, and when I remained silent, his demeanor grew increasingly agitated. He demanded that I hand over the money. I earned money from my part-time job to support his sister, but when I refused to give him more, Larry erupted in anger. He shoved the signed divorce papers towards me, accusing me of living off his money and claiming there was no need for me to save for Roger. His harsh words even suggested that he valued Rachel more than our son. At that moment, I stopped cooking, grabbed the divorce papers, took Roger by the hand, and headed for the door. Larry's voice boomed behind us as he declared his intent for a divorce, ordering me never to come back. I replied firmly, stating I would never return to a home where strangers could come and go freely. Once outside, I received numerous messages and calls from Larry, all of which I ignored. I turned off my phone and sought refuge at my parents' house. There, I shared the recording and the divorce papers with them. While I confessed that I no longer had any love or affection for Larry, my primary concern was for Roger. My parents, fully supportive of whatever decision I felt was best, acknowledged the potential emotional impact a divorce could have on him. As we discussed these heavy matters, Roger, unaware of the full extent of the situation, mentioned he was hungry. Seeing my distress, my mother kindly stepped in to make burgers, his favorite meal. Overwhelmed by emotions and grateful for the supportive environment my parents provided, I couldn't hold back my tears as my mother served Roger his meal with a warm, reassuring smile. As my mother prepared the burgers, Roger and I were reminded that we could always find comfort and joy with family. Taking a big bite, Roger's face lit up with delight, and he praised his grandma's cooking, saying he wished he could have her burgers every day. Smiling, I told him the secret ingredient was the love we all shared for him. In a heartwarming gesture, Roger took another large bite and then offered it to me. His simple act of sharing moved me to tears, despite my efforts to hold them back. Noticing my tears, my father reassured Roger that they were tears of happiness, not sadness. Understanding this, Roger hugged me tightly, and I saw my father's eyes brimming with emotion, reflecting the deep value of family. In this comforting atmosphere, I explained to Roger how precious family truly is. Surprised, he asked if Dad thought only Rachel was family. My father gently confirmed that this wasn't the case and asked Roger if he would like to live with us. With a joyful laugh, Roger happily agreed, bringing smiles to everyone's faces. Amidst these tender family moments, I realized that it was time to part ways with Larry. Though the decision was tough, and the thought of discussing the divorce weighed heavily on my heart, Roger seemed to intuitively understand the need for change. He even playfully called our older pet dog his younger brother. The next day, we began formalizing the divorce proceedings with the help of a lawyer who was a friend of my father. As we set the legal wheels in motion, my father and Roger shared comforting laughs, lightening the mood. I spent time reflecting on my childhood and the strength I had gained from my family. The following day, I checked my phone and found it overwhelmed with over 180 calls and messages from Larry, revealing his emotional turmoil. Exhausted by the barrage and needing clarity, I turned off my phone. With the lawyer's assistance, we explained the entire situation to my parents, uncovering that Rachel had accumulated significant debt due to a gambling and shopping addiction, further complicating the already strained family dynamics. Larry had secretly assumed the role of guarantor for Rachel, planning to use my savings to cover her debts. The lawyer informed us that the divorce papers had already been submitted. Larry, overwhelmed by the reality of the situation, broke down when he realized the divorce was final. Despite anticipating disagreements over child support, he agreed to pay $145 per month for Roger's upkeep. In a later conversation, Larry's tone was markedly calmer. He admitted to his financial manipulations and shared his complicated feelings about his responsibilities toward Rachel. I remained firm in my decision to move forward without reconsideration. As I heard his faint sobbing, he wished me happiness before ending the call. Resolute, I discussed future plans with my parents and decided it would be best for Roger and me to stay with them until he was older. I resumed my full-time role as president of the company, reaffirming my commitment to a stable and secure future for myself and my son. Later, I learned that Larry and Rachel had explained the situation of the divorce and Rachel's debts to their parents, leading to their disownment. Today, I find immense joy and peace in being surrounded by my loving family, far removed from the turmoil of my past with Larry.